and problem solving has some similarities. One of the most important being that the best way to achieve the objectives is through small group learning. Which of these do you think is a small group in terms of education? So you have one group which is actually the French national team which won the World Cup. There you have around maybe 15 people. Here you have around maybe 25, 30 people. Here you have 2 people. In education, which of these would qualify as a small group? Pardon?
All of them, if they have the same goal and the same...
Okay, so you feel that the size is not important, the goal which is important. Okay. Any other opinion?
Size is important. The last picture cannot be considered as a group because they're just 2.
Just 2 people, so that will be probably...
And, the other one, the last one,
Okay.
it's too much for, I think there are more than 10 there.
Okay.
It cannot be considered as a small group. Neither can. So the first picture just qualifies.
So for you it's only the football team on top?
Yeah.
Okay. So the second opinion was that number is also important, because if it is 2 less or 2 more, it will not actually serve the purpose of interaction. Okay. So different opinions. Anything else? Yes. 1 second, I'll just... Here.
I think the size of the group is not important. What's important is what the group does.
Okay. So third opinion, that size is not important, it is what the group does. Okay. So again, based on evidence, there is no clear answer. If you see most of the studies, they say that an ideal number is around 6 to 10. But like many of you said, what is more important is what the group can do. If the group can interact with each other. So what we said is that the key is that in a small group, for the learning to be effective, each person should be able to interact with everyone else. And like we said, most studies say that the ideal number for that is around 6 to 10. If it's less than 6, the interaction is a bit superficial. If it is much more, everybody will not be able to interact with everybody else. So 6 to 10 is probably the ideal number, but what the group does is more important than the number. So like somebody said that. Okay. Why small groups? So again, it is proven that small groups have a lot of advantages as compared to large group teaching. Anything which you can think of? Any points where? Yes. You can, is the mic around there? Yeah. The mic. Yeah.
I think that small group is better than large one, because I think that it minimizes conflict between members of the group.
Okay.
It will make interaction between members more easy.
So it's more collaborative, you mean? Okay. Yes.
Movement, more opportunity for each student to be involved in the
Right. So people can be more involved. Everybody gets a chance. Okay. I think Dr. Rao there. So compared to a lecture, small group might be easier to facilitate. Yes. Communication is easy, and probably the communication skills are also developed better in a small group as compared to large group. Absolutely. So that's one of the key points. It's more interactive. Anything else? The male sides? Yes, sir.
In fact, we have this problem in computer science and other domains, the problem of conflicts between people and the differences also. So this is might affect the performance.
Right. So you feel that actually a negative point related to small group, is it? Or you feel that there can be conflict between the members? Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. In fact, that's practically what we see a lot in small groups. You have dominant students, you have students who don't talk at all, you have friends who go together. So conflicts are often there, which is not a bad thing necessarily, can be usually a good thing also. So again, there is no evidence to show that teaching in small groups improves knowledge. There is no real evidence. But like we discussed before, there is evidence to say that the knowledge is deeper. So what you know tends to be more deeper learned. But knowledge retention itself in terms of actual knowledge gained probably is not much different in small group versus large group. It improves analytical skills, critical thinking. It improves active learning, constructive learning, building on prior knowledge, communication skills, collaborative skills, teamwork, leadership, organizational skills, and so on. Okay. So now coming to the practical aspects. Can you share what you do in your small groups? Any tips which you can share with the rest of the groups? I'm sure all of you must be doing small groups at some stage, right? Practicals, lab, for example. So how do you do it? Is there anything, any suggestions which you would like to make when you handle a small group? Any points, tips? Yes? Yes, sir.
I think we have discussed this, but for me, I feel that it depends on the level of the students as well.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's within the program and within the course. So let's say in the program, it is in the beginning of the year, like first year students, it's you don't really go for the problem solving, rather some may be problem based to stimulate the learning,
All right.
But in the later years when I take courses, yes, there we have some problem solving issues.
Okay.
And even within the course, not in the beginning, but little toward the end, like once all the definition and everything is clear, then I do. So now in a small group, for me, I go for 3 to 4%, not more than that.
Okay.
And
Right.
it's a case-based study.
Right.
So because my thinking is that if I have more than that, then sometimes, as you said, the dominance of 2 or 3 students will solve it, other 3 will be outlier.
Okay.
But if it is 2 or 3 or 4, everybody's participation has more chance than, so that's my opinion.
Okay. And you get a chance to see all of them also.
So all
Easy.
of them
Okay.
has some participation. and
Right.
I can
So thank you, sir. So the point which doctor is trying to make is that it depends on the level of the students. So you're saying that for the first year students, you might have a bit more of hand holding required, and later on you go into proper problem solving, right? Any other tips which you use in your practice for small group learning?
Brainstorming,
Okay, so you use a lot of brainstorming. Is it- What do you teach? Which
education.
education? Okay. So is it easy for you to do brainstorming, or do you find problems over there?
Yes, so that I'm teaching master degree, the group small.
How small is it?
Yeah, small. 13.
Okay, right. So you use a lot of brainstorming over there. Okay. Anything else to add?
Depends on the time of the session. It's tutor session, it's coach session, it is clinical bedside teaching session. And also the setup of each session. For example,
Okay.
in our college, in College of Medicine, tutor, you have to assign a head, a secretary, time management, so
Okay.
a lot of
So it depends on the type of session also. So again, coming to a bit of experience from a College of Medicine, for us we have different types of small group sessions, and the classical session is what we call a tutor group session, and those sessions are led by the students. So like we discussed before, you have a student leader who is leading the session. There is somebody who is taking the notes, who is known as secretary. There is somebody who is keeping time. So it's all done by the students. So it's led by the students. Yes, sir. You were going to say something. Can we, 1 second, sir, I'll just get can we get the mic? Thank you. Right. Okay. So it depends on the type of class also, is what you mean to say. Thank you. Okay. Now, what we'll do is we'll just give some general suggestions on how to start off with small groups. The first thing which we do actually when we start off the session is we put certain ground rules. So we tell the students what you can do and what you cannot do. And usually we let the students themselves make the ground rules. So we tell the group leader to ask the group. Ground rules, for example, could be, can they use the mobile phones or not? Can they take a break in between or not? If somebody comes late, what happens? So all those things are put in the beginning as ground rules, and usually it is a good practice to write it down on a chart so that everybody is seeing the ground rules at all times. So ground rules are an important thing. You can see two types of seating. Which one do you think works better for PBL? Any reason? Because everyone is equal and everybody is interacting at the same level. So the best arrangement for a problem-based learning is always a round table. We had started off with a round table, but now it's all become straight over here. So now it's traditional now. Okay. Clear objectives. For every session, you need to have a clear idea what you want the students to learn. Because if your objectives are not clear, your brainstorming will not reach anywhere. Your final conclusions will not reach anywhere. So for each session, a clear objective list is necessary. So always have clear objectives. Preparation. Again, give an example from our college. So like we said that the subject expert is often not the person who is conducting the session. So for example, the case might be cardiology, but it may be conducted by a biochemist. So he will have a manual which gives the details of the case, what the objectives are, what the student is expected to learn, plus a bit of the theory related to it. And unless you are really prepared with that, you will not be able to conduct the session. So it is very important that you are completely prepared with the case, objectives, and a bit of the theoretical aspects, so that you make sure that the students are doing what is required. The objectives are being fulfilled. It is always good to start with an icebreaker. So one thing which we usually do is that we ask the students to introduce each other. So if there are 8 students in a group, we pair them up together and we tell one student to introduce the other student, give 2 or 3 points regarding the other student, or any other icebreaker activity so that the group starts feeling comfortable with each other. So icebreakers are another thing which is helpful. And now coming to the point which you raised, Doctor, the conflict. Any small group, there will be conflict, and we said that that is not necessarily a bad thing. Theoretically, it is said that any small group goes through 4 stages. The first stage is called forming. So this is a stage in which the group of students are coming together for the first time. They don't know each other. They don't know what to do. And here the facilitator will have to do a lot of hand holding. So he or she will actually have to sit with them, tell them that, okay, this is the course is related to this issue. We'll be focusing on some issues like this. You will have one leader, you will have a note taker, etc., etc., etc. So you'll need to do a bit of talking to clarify the issues. So this stage is called the forming stage, in which students are not really familiar on what they are supposed to do. The second stage is called storming. So what usually happens is that here is where the conflict starts. So you have good students, you have poor students, you have in-between students. So you will find that some students start to dominate the discussion. Some students are completely quiet. Friends tend to sit together. They don't discuss with other people. And here is where the facilitator's skill comes to make sure that everybody is participating equally. So norming, storming. What next? What do you think happens after that? So you form, you storm. So then it's called the norming stage. So this is when the conflicts are a bit resolved, active discussion is taking place, something productive starts to happen. Okay. So you form, you storm, you norm, and ideally the next stage is performing. And this is where they actually start working on it properly. The learning objectives are generated, real brainstorming occurs. Okay. It is possible that many groups do not reach the stage of performing. So if your facilitator is not really that good, you will be always stuck at the level of the norming stage. So this is where the skill of the facilitator comes in making sure that the group moves towards performing as soon as possible. Okay. So forming, storming, norming and performing. Now, yeah. The first stage we said is forming, the second is storming, the third is norming. Norming is they start functioning together, the conflicts are somewhat controlled, and the next stage is the most productive stage, which is called performing, when they actually start proper brainstorming, real productivity takes place. So, yeah. Norming means the conflicts have been resolved, so they have started working together. Okay. The little fights, all those things between the groups is okay now, and they are working well as a group. So that is called norming. Norming, N-O-R-M-I-N-G, norming. Okay. Yes, sir.
Question is, when you facilitate form the group, should be random always? Should be random, or on which basis?
Okay, so that again depends on institution to institution. In our place, we assign the groups. So we actually, for every year, we have a roster which says that for each session, which will be the group, who will be the facilitator.
And is it random?
It's random. And it changes, the groups changes every year. Okay. So there's a lot of mixing going on. Different colleges do it differently, but this is the way which we do it. So we have random allocation of the group, the facilitator. Also we allocate the roles also. So for each session, when the student comes, they know who will be the leader of the session, who will be the timekeeper, who will be the secretary. For the whole year.
But is it, if you are giving chance to one to learn leadership?
No, that keeps changing every session.
Oh, you change it. Okay.
Yeah, but that change is known in advance. So he knows that this session I'm the leader, but next session somebody else. So they know that in advance.
So everybody will have a chance, different role.
Everybody gets a chance. Everybody gets a chance. And now we have, some people consider a later stage which is called mourning or adjourning. The reason it's called mourning is because, you know, when you have the same group for a long time, they get used to each other. Then suddenly when you change for the next semester, many of them are not happy. So that is called mourning. They want to stick to the same group. Okay. So mourning or adjourning. Now, the whole idea, like we said, is that initially, when the groups are immature, you need a lot of hand-holding. So the role of the facilitator is much more. But as the group progresses, the facilitator becomes more and more in the background. So he becomes more passive, and the students are starting to lead the session. So a good facilitator means, with the course of time, he can just sit in the back and the students run the session. Okay. The roles which we ideally assign include a group leader. We also call it a student chairperson. You have somebody who records what's being discussed. It's called a scribe, recorder or secretary. You have a timekeeper who makes sure that the time is kept. And of course the rest of the group are called members. Okay. So these are the ideal roles which we assign. You have a leader, you have a timekeeper, you have a secretary or a scribe, and you have the member, the normal member of the group. Okay, any questions so far? Yes, sir.
To call the group leader as a coordinator, not a group leader.
Okay. Actually, again, a lot of places different terminologies are used. So in classical PBL, we call it a leader. In our place, we call it a chairperson. So you are right that you can use different terms.
I got
which
it from my son
okay.
in the college.
Okay.
When I talked with him about this, he said, Dad, we don't call him a group leader. We call him a coordinator. This is just to the other to accept that.
True. The leader may be a bit higher level is what you feel. Okay. So that's a valid point. Okay. Anything else from the lady side? Any questions, comments so far?
Yeah, for group leader, you should, if they all the time they select one, you advise everyone to change this one.
Yeah, so what we said is that in the roster, it is arranged in such a way that for one session, one person is a leader, next session somebody else becomes a leader.
Ask them with the group to select one.
Uh,
They select all the time.
no, that's what he said. We have a roster system. So we, at the beginning of the year, we give a roster. So students know in advance for each session who is going to be the leader. And that keeps changing. So that we make sure that everybody gets a chance in rotation. Okay. Okay, so now coming to those practical skills itself. The 4 crucial skills which we use for the problem-based learning sessions. One is called brainstorming. The second is called Socratic questioning. And the third, which is usually grouped together, is called feedback and reflection. Okay, so we'll just go one by one. I'm sure that all of you must be using it in your respective courses. The idea of brainstorming was given by a scientist called Alex Osborn, who wrote a famous book called Applied Imagination. The idea behind brainstorming is that when a group of students discusses a point, you generate ideas. So it is said that it works on the principle of 2 heads are better than 1. So when you have different opinions coming in, you generate more ideas than individuals can generate as one single person. It's also called the 1 plus 1 is equal to 3 concepts. Plus it generates active learning, constructive learning, and in general is more in line with the concepts of adult learning. So that is why we stress a lot on brainstorming. Now, this is the method which we use in our place. So it has 4 broad steps. The first step is called divergence. So you have a topic, the people start brainstorming. There are a lot of ideas generated, which may be correct, may not be correct, but everything is taken, which means that at this stage, nothing is wrong. And even if the idea looks very stupid, we still take it. Anything can be put on the board. The next stage, we converge it. So we start filtering it out. So things which make sense, we join together, while the things which are not at all sensible, we start moving aside. So divergence, convergence. Then you have critical closure and formulating of the final learning objectives. So it's called the funnel method. So it starts with divergence, then you start closing it together, and because it looks like a funnel, that's why it's called a funnel method. This is the most important point regarding brainstorming. We say that let 1,000 flowers bloom, which means at this stage don't be judgmental. So like we said, the students might bring points which are totally unrelated, but even then we put it on the board. We never tell them that this is wrong or this is not to be discussed at this stage. Anything is fine. So all points are welcome, everything is put on the board. Later on in the second stage is when we start filtering it. So in brainstorming, the key point is to encourage comments. Anything is fine. Wrong, right, doesn't make a difference. Okay. So that is brainstorming. The facilitator's role, same thing. So it depends on the level of the students, depends on the topic, a lot of things. But in general, you need to manage the group dynamics. You need to make sure that everybody is participating equally. So nobody is dominating too much, nobody is keeping quiet too much. You need to ensure that the students are moving towards the right conclusion based on your learning objectives. So like we said, you have your learning objectives. So your aim is to make sure that the students are achieving those objectives, not moving away from the point to be discussed. And as far as possible, you need to stay in the background. So you need to make sure that students are leading the session without you talking too much as possible.